This is the Elevate Construction Podcast, delivering remarkable content for workers, leaders, and companies in construction wanting to take their next step. Get ready to step out of your comfort zone with Jason Schroeder as he encourages you to do better, live a remarkable life, and expect more. Let's go.
Welcome to the Elevate Construction Podcast, where we engage in hard conversations that help us implement current industry trends. My name is Jason Schroeder, and I am with Spencer Easton today. We are going to discuss how scheduling comes first in everything we do in construction. So Spencer, say hi to everybody, and please give just a quick background on yourself, who you are, married, children, background, where you grew up, please.
Sweet. Hello, everyone on the Elevate Industry. Thank you for having me today, Jason. It's awesome to be with you. A little background about myself. I live here in Arizona with my wife and 3 children. They're all in grade, well, not all of them, but 2 in grade school, and little guy that is my little buddy. Every father needs a son, right? So blessed with a son on the tail end there. And I'm excited to be here. I've been in the construction industry ever since I can remember. All my family's in it, and decided to make it a career. Went to school, worked in the trades, done a little bit of everything, and ended up kind of focusing a lot over the past 5 years in scheduling and helping run a scheduling department. So yeah.
Wonderful. A little bit of background from my perspective. When I first was introduced to Spencer, he was very energetic. You'll notice from these podcasts, he talks fast. He's got a lot of passion, a lot of energy, but he's done more in my sphere, meaning the people that I interact with, to move forward progress and high energy and develop standards and systems than almost anybody that I know. So he is the real deal. He knows what he's doing, knows what he's talking about. I consider him a scheduling expert. He's also very good at cranes and a number of other things. Actually, real quick, Spencer, give us 2 to 3 skills or hobbies or things that we don't know about you, just real quickly, that kind of build rapport and make it more interesting. 3, choose the quick things.
So I have operated, not that I'm an operator. I had a lot of help, and I was just sitting in the seat doing what someone was telling me to do. But I have operated a 900-ton all-terrain crane at my time at a crane company when I was doing logistics and head of operations and dispatch. So that was really fun. I've also, I have a past history of being, and I don't even know if you know this, Jason, but I was a private investigator for a while and had my PI license, and I went and served bench warrants and all sorts of things to people in some crazy situations. Some really cool stories there. I've also done everything in construction, from drafting, being a project engineer, assistant superintendent, a labor operator, operated a lot of earthwork equipment in my early years. Love me some time in that skid steer. And yeah, so that's some little skills and things that I've done.
That's super interesting. I'm wondering when you're next going to tell me that you're really, a part of the FBI, or that you've been through SEAL training or something like that. Like the things that you keep bringing up is over the top. So let me tie that into one of my favorite questions, because I don't want to ask your role or your title. I want to get out of that habit. What do you love? What drives you? What fires you up and gets you to the point where you're like, I want to kick on a song and just go conquer the world? What do you love?
Breaking down old processes that don't work. Or I was introduced to lean. I just loved figuring out the why and everything. My favorite question was why. Well, why do we do it that way? Why is it like this? Why? And so finding those reasons can help you understand the core purpose and what we're trying to do with that process, and improving it and making it 10 times better has just been my passion. So when I found lean, and that there's this whole culture built on continuous improvement and standardization, I fell in love, because it was like speaking my love language. And so that's what really, really tickles me pink is being able to really break down processes into the easy bits and pieces of what it is at its core, and removing waste and so on and so forth. My one thing, if I could do one thing, is to break down the barrier between the office and the field. When I started my career, I was in the field, and I was like, I don't want this. I went into the office, and I was like, this is stupid. And the problem is, there's a barrier between the ox and the field. That's where the waste lies. And if I could do anything to rip those barriers down and destroy the animosity between the white and the blue collar, that's my passion and goal in life.
I share that vision. I think we need, we always talk about integrated project delivery, integrated systems, integrated technology, integrated everything. We need to have integrated project teams and especially integrated craft workers. I would just love the day when the office team, the management team, used the same bathrooms as everyone else. We were able to do that on the research laboratory, and it created such a bond with everybody. It was fantastic. That's just my one little thing, but I love that explanation, Spencer. That's fantastic. So to give a little bit of context or proof of experience here, I'm going to ask 4 quick questions. How long have you worked in scheduling? How did you get started in scheduling? What are you working on now? And what are some of the things that you see that keep people from being successful? So let's start with, how long have you worked in scheduling? Let's start there.
I've worked in critical path scheduling for the past almost 5 years now. Before that, I did scheduling manpower, equipment, and cranes, 160 mobile cranes, 200 to 300 truck drivers, riggers, you name it. And so managing and scheduling the equipment I've been doing for, even longer than that. So that's kind of my experience in scheduling.
Wonderful. How did you get started in it?
Again, my time at crane company where we supply cranes, and then time at when I graduated from Weber State University with my bachelor's degree in construction management. I was looking for a GC to go work at, and Oakland obviously was the gold standard. So I wanted to go work there. And so I applied, and it kind of fit with my experience with the crane company and understanding CPM. So that's what kind of got me started there.
Wonderful. What are you working on right now? Like, I know you're working on scheduling the first planner system, implementing last planner on projects, but what's the main thing right now that you're passionate, that hill that you're trying to climb?
I'm trying to clone myself and make, I have a team of schedulers here in Arizona, and I'm also trying to help those in other states and other departments at the company that I work at, and trying to get the knowledge that I've been able to learn out of my brain and into onto paper, and be able to show, this is how we've had success in the past. These are the principles, and then see where this group of bright young schedulers, superintendents, and individuals can take those skills and kind of take us to the next echelon and just share knowledge.
Well, this podcast is certainly going to help. All right. So the last thing is, what are some of actually, maybe not some of the things, but what is one thing, at least, you can mention more if you want, of the things that keep people from being successful in scheduling? And it can be from the role of a superintendent, PM, anybody in the industry. What's one thing that keeps people from being successful?
The lack of visualization. Scheduling tools nowadays, the standards nowadays are not very good visualization tools. And so it's hard to understand unless you're in it every day and kind of see what's happening behind the scenes and really dive deep into understanding, learning the software and tools that are out there. Understanding the basics of CPM is super simple and easy. There's only a couple rules, but then how the actual applies that rules, it's hard to understand, visualize, and see unless you use that software and use that tool. So that's the problem, is we're not getting enough time in the driver's seat. And that's, quite frankly, honestly, in my opinion, and this is not self-serving, is the reason why schedulers exist, is because the tools are too difficult to use. Thus, you need a scheduler.
Got it. Well, thank you. That's a perfect introduction, segue into us trying to use this podcast platform to help solve some solutions, to fix some problems in the construction industry, to elevate construction, and really help this scheduling piece of that puzzle. So let me start out with a quote here. Cost, schedule, quality, and safety are all equal, but schedule comes first to support the other 3. I've mentioned that before on previous podcasts, but we're going to talk about it today. And I appreciate, Spencer, you being on so that we can discuss this. And actually, just full transparency, Spencer recommended this topic. And so I'm excited to get right into it. So Spence, you were telling me a story of where this has worked well. And I think if you would just let me take 1 or 2 minutes after that to talk about an experience where it didn't work, then we'll get right into the topic, which is why does scheduling come first? So take it away.
So we have a client who in the past has had high expectations for quality, has real big limitations on cost, and the schedule portion is semi-important. And so that's where all of the focus has been in cost and quality. Over the years, it's bit them so many times that as a standard, they have a third-party schedule auditor. They still to this day have the biggest problem with cost and or bottlenecks with cost and having very, very high expectations for quality. So with that being said, the schedule started to come first and it started to fix the problems. On a specific job, we had a project team that was given 3 months worth of time to do planning prior to any GMPing or anything like that. We weren't even really deep into DDs or anything, any design that would really be something that we would want to build a real solid plan off of. And they started focusing on schedule first, because they kept saying that this was the problem. And the owner even said, I want 40 days of construction contingency in this schedule. Mandated it almost. And we're like, okay, this is awesome, right? This is everyone's dream. And that focus has set the team up for such success. It is almost a night and day. I attribute a good portion of the success that we're having, both in safety, quality, and cost on this project because the schedule came first.
I like that. So actually, this project that you're talking about was the project that Ricky Davenport was referencing when I interviewed him the other day. So that's really interesting. And people that listen to that podcast know that that project is a remarkable project and it is well run. So my quick little 30-second, 60-second example, I remember a high-profile project the other day that was going through planning, and there was a stipulated sum for the total project budget. And they had assumed an estimating, and nobody can guess what company, what project this is. Nobody's going to guess. It doesn't have anything to do with anything you think it's associated with. This is completely disconnected. But I knew about this project, and what happened was the overall duration was based on the stipulated sum. And by the time we got down to the full design, we were in CDs that we needed 2 more months. Or they needed 2 more months, and that was recommended, and they couldn't get it because all of that cost was allocated to design, and it wasn't carved out, meaning that time, the GCs, all of that money wasn't carved out early enough in the process, and so the project team just had to deal with it. And this is something that we see over and over and over again if the schedule doesn't come first. So there's a good example that Spencer gave you, and there's an example of what not to do. And again, don't try and guess what projects these are. You're never going to guess. So let's introduce the topic. So why does scheduling come first? Let me ask you that question, Spencer. I know you've already mentioned a couple of things, but in your mind, why does scheduling come first?
You tell someone, here's an activity, and let's just randomize it. Here's some concrete. And at a normal size crew, for a normal size job, what's normal to that company, what's normal to that industry, and it takes them 5 days. If you tell them to get it done in 2, they're going to be cutting corners. They're going to be throwing too many people in the hole, whatever it is. If to do the work properly, it takes 5 days. If we're going to tell somebody to get it done in 2 days, when to do it correctly would be 5, I mean, and money can buy anything, right? But if we tell them that, the first thing that's going to go is safety. There's either going to be too many men in the hole. There's going to be or women, right? Men or women in the hole. There's going to be too much material flying at the same time. People are going to be cutting corners, and the safety is the first thing to go. The second thing is quality. If you tell someone to go faster than what is needed in that area or for whatever the scope of work is, quality is going to suffer. Because as you start to cut corners, you're doing you're installing in a way that you're not proud of. You're just trying to slap, some lipstick on this pig and get out of the way of the critical path so that the next person could be the one in the hot seat, right? So if you tell them this is the time frame we want you to do it in, they go to, well, how many guys is that going to take me? And, here's their plan. They're going to do these footings, then this, wall, and this, and then this slab, right? And so if they see that plan, they'll be able to say, okay, at that long, I'll be able to put these many guys on it and this much material and so on and so forth. So that plan, if presented to them, it gives a clear expectation of cost. It gives a clear expectation of, if you want it done like that's very achievable. So then quality can be achieved, right? And if doing it in a proper amount of time, safety can be achieved because we're going at a safe, steady pace.
I like that. So let's brainstorm together of a couple of things that a schedule enables. So you talked about safety and you also talked about quality. So one of the things that's on my mind is the actual safety planning. How often it's not just running people too fast. Well, it mainly is, to your point, making people work too fast and having schedule push safety and quality out the door. But the other thing is we can use schedules as a safety planning tool, right? For scaffolding, for excavations, for shoring, for anything else like that. We can use scheduling a schedule as a tool, and we often do in fresh eyes meetings, in risk analysis, the risk analysis meetings that we do before the project starts. So that's one thought that comes to mind. What is another way in your mind that a schedule helps to plan quality or enable quality, besides just making it to where workers aren't going fast?
We actually planning the time to have the quality check, whether it's an hourly type schedule or daily, if you're doing like a last planner type system where you're actually going down to that task level and saying, here's the time frame that you need for inspection. I want 2 solid hours or however long you would need for that time frame. Really thinking ahead and having someone that has actually done the work, that knows how long that check is actually going to take, not just throwing random time in there, but understanding what steps need to take place in order to double check, make sure that it's installed once and it's installed correctly and it's installed to the expectations of the owner.
I like that. And the actual pre-construction meetings, right? We can schedule those. We can schedule the first in place mock-up, the initial inspection, some people call them. We can have the schedule become a trigger for our quality process. And I also like that you'd put in inspections. How often do we not put in the time for inspections for four-way or for the overhead inspections or in-wall or, any of these typical processes, even water testing on the exterior? How often is that neglected, right? So I really appreciate that. Now, cost. Now, this might be self-explanatory to people listening, but let me ask the question. You start and I'll finish it. How does cost get affected or enabled or supported by schedule? How does schedule support cost?
Schedule drives the cost. Our industry, for some reason, thinks it's the other way around. Days equals dollars. Dollars don't equal days. How many days were on the project increase the dollars, and that's where the issue comes. Is we start with the dollars and we say this is what it's going to cost. Well, maybe, but if you have a plan, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. Now let's collect feedback on what that's going to cost if we're doing A, B, and C, and that's what drives it. I think to me it's simple. If you're going to flow through a building at this rate, this is what the cost is going to be. I've seen some projects where we've quadrupled or cut the time down to a fourth of the time frame that it should take. Obviously, the cost goes to the window. The cost is not equal to the scope. The cost is equal to the schedule. So it's if the schedule compresses and this is what we need to do, the cost will reflect what the schedule is saying. You don't start with the schedule and say, what are we going to do with that? If you're doing that, you're driving bad behavior. You're driving how fast can we push people? It's that push mentality. If you're pulling, okay, Mr. Owner, when do you need to start? That's asking those questions. Okay, can we make that fit? How can we safely do that? How can we break up the work? You're into the planning, right? You're not looking at costs until you have a plan that's safe. If we really care about safety, we start with schedule. If we really care about quality, we start with schedule. And if we want to know the true cost, we start with schedule so that we can understand the cost.
I like that. And from simple terms, our general conditions are driven by the overall duration. Our general requirements are driven by the overall duration. And man hours, we'll spend or waste most of our money on wasted man hours. And having an increased level of manpower, increased inventory levels, increased manpower levels on site. So if we don't have that crunch, if we actually get it into a flow, we can reduce manpower, we can reduce inventory, we can get the right size team, the right size amount of workers, the right crew sizes bought for the right duration, and have the overall accurate project budget. You know, Spencer, one thing that comes to my mind, the first lean training I ever did, an instructor told me, well, if you have a stipulated end date, then lean says work backwards and try and figure out how to fit it into that end date. And I can see that a little bit, but I think lean to me now means more flow efficiency. It means flow to me now, which means we have to understand what the capacity of the current industry is, not overburden the workforce, not create unevenness in the workforce, reduce waste in the workforce, and get the accurate overall amount of time so that we have a chance of winning from the start. I think that having the right duration and a good plan of pre-construction and a team that is aggressive with a good amount of drive and a sense of urgency is really what you need to have a good, aggressive project. And then I think those projects, here's my opinion. You tell me what you think, Spencer. I think if you can get the right amount of time without needlessly overburdening the project, then I think once you're in a flow, you have a chance to then take advantage of opportunities and get back to a shorter duration. But I think when we start with a shorter duration and start pushing people on top of each other, we just end up with a longer duration. Thoughts?
Any superintendent that I've talked to, and any good superintendent, my career is working with superintendents. Any superintendent that really, really cares knows schedule and knows how to drive schedule. When we don't care about the workers, you start to hear the same things that we hear across the industry. You know, this owner wants us too fast. The design isn't done. We're starting to point fingers. If we take the time to schedule things out and say, this is when we're going to do it, and plans change all the time, we know. But if we take the time, that is where we can do good by those workers that make us look good, by those workers that are sweating their armpits. You know what I mean? Like, they're out there working. And, you know, anyone that has worked in this industry and has actually worked with their hands, like, you know what I'm talking about. If you're out there and have to suffer in the dirt and in the freaking heat or in the snow or whatever you're dealing with, you've told yourself this. I'm being asked way too much. This is like they're just pushing me. They're just pushing me. I'm a number. I'm a pig. I'm a, like, you know what I mean? I'd been there. That's why I didn't want to do it for the rest of my life. I was like, screw this. Like, I wasn't respected when I was in the field, you know, and it was like, well, that's just how it is, right? And it's not how it is. Like, we have the power to change it. You're right, Jason. When you're talking about here's a milestone, how do we pull it in within that time frame? That's the second place to go. The first is flow, because that's the goal. How do we get to flow? Flow where you can, in the Toyota way, right? Flow where you can, pull where you must. And it's like, well, pull plan is this, like, it's this lean thing. No, the goal is flow. How do you get everyone going at the same rate and the same rhythm and the same? So that is the goal. And if we need to get to flow, if we need to get to a good schedule, that's what the goal needs to be. That's where we need to start from, and everything else is ancillary and secondary to it.
I like how you mentioned the goal. I don't know if that was on purpose or if that was by accident, but one of the best books, and we have to mention a book on every podcast. Like, it's a tradition now. So there's a book called The Goal that talks about flow. Absolutely amazing, over the top. So thank you for that. So let's go back and forth. I'll do one, then you do one. What are some things that we can do to get schedule started earlier? So I'll give you one of my favorite ones. And actually, Jake Williams taught me this, because I had talked to Jake about takt planning. And then he said, why don't you do a takt plan for the entire project? And why don't you do it as schematic design instead of starting a P6 that you'll just trash and replace? So that's one thing. we can move schedule up in the process by doing a takt plan and schematic. What's one for you?
The biggest thing is there's not enough training in our industry on schedule. It's this nebulous thing. If you're not in it every day, like it's something that's foreign. It's something that's like you don't understand it. You can't visualize it and see it. That's the problem. We don't train it enough, and it's the tools that are out there like P6 and these other tools that are industry standards are not visual tools. So, the vast majority of the population don't get it because you can't see it. You can't really understand it. And there's this big disconnect I can see between where the industry is and the understanding, right? So there's this gap. And that, again, I'm going to bring it up. That's the reason why there's a position in our industry for schedulers, because there's a divide between the tool that is the standard and people's understanding from every walk of life. Supers, project managers, project engineers, field engineers. Our whole industry has this lack of understanding of what time management really is.
Yeah, I agree. The visualization of time and space. So one that I would add, and this is low-hanging fruit, but get builders into the pre-construction process earlier. You had mentioned that superintendent was in there for 3 months before they began. At the research laboratory, I was able to spend, believe it or not, 9 months. And just every example that I've ever heard of builders being into a project early on, left of the line planning has always panned out well. So that's one for me. What's one for you?
One for me is actually caring. Like, ask questions. If you're not able to go to your the other side of the trailer, if I'm a superintendent, if you can't go ask questions about what the owner expectations are or what the PM's working on, it has to be integrated on both sides. If you're a PM or on the other side, you need to be as involved in the schedule as the super is. It's the project schedule. It's not the superintendent. Maybe he's in charge of it, and maybe but the team will provide the best schedule. One person can't do it by themselves.
I like that one. Okay, so we're getting close to closing out this podcast, and I think we've talked about some things that we can do. So I really appreciate your insights today. Some current conditions that we're dealing with and why we're talking about this is that sometimes superintendents arrive on the project once it's started. Base durations are based off of cost. So the duration of the project, the overall schedule is based off of cost, not what it's actually going to take to build the project. And in fact, in this local area where you and I are doing this interview, there's a 20% difference between what we can sell and what we can actually build the project for. And it's really, it's nuts. It's so frustrating to me. And I've looked at that over a number of years, and that 20% is real. The other couple of conditions is that schedules are developed sometimes after the project starts. That's the craziest thing that I've ever seen, but it happens company after company after company in this industry. Go ahead.
So to me, that's us. We've created this nebulous bubble. We've set the expectations for the owners. We're going faster, and we're not getting slow. We're trashing the relationships with the trade experts that we partner with. We're the ones that have to steer this ship back to reality. We have to get to a place where this is what this job really should take. This is what, and Mr. Owner, if you want to pay a premium, then, we can look at a different situation, but we need to get back to good scheduling practices. This is on us.
I like that. That's perfect. Another couple of things, when we have schedules that are not realistic, that doesn't have a good overall duration and a good flow, that creates bad environments where safety goes out the door, quality goes out the door, cost basically goes through the roof, inventory increases, manpower increases, and typically only one person's concerned about the schedule, and that's typically the superintendent, and that ought not to be. Like Spencer said, we need to be using it as a project tool. So let's give some challenges, Spencer, and let's do 5 challenges. You go first, and I'll go second.
My challenge to anyone that might be listening is that P6 and scheduling go hand in hand. So even if you're not, and let me back up, it's not necessarily P6, it's CPM. CPM and scheduling go hand in hand. You have to learn the industry tool, and to understand sequencing. Like that's where you're going to understand dependencies, relationships. CPM is where we start. That's been the industry standard since 1965. That's when the AGC took it on as the industry standard. That's where we've started from. That tool has been outgrown, but we all need to understand critical path methodology so that we can elevate into the next sphere, which is visualization and taking it one step further so we all can understand what the schedule's saying.
I like that. One challenge for me would be to get builders on board early in pre-construction. Let's make sure if you're an owner listening to this podcast, pay for pre-con and get those builders in there. And if you're a construction company or if you're a professional in this industry, go make sure that you have, even if you have to transfer some finances and go at risk some costs into pre-construction, get your people in there planning early, because a day in pre-con will save a week in the field. So we absolutely have to do this. So that would be one recommendation for me. You're next, Spencer.
Another challenge that all of us could start right now is develop a plan early. Develop a plan now. Don't stop and wait. Don't say, oh, I don't have this detail. I don't have that, right? It's develop a plan early in design. Start driving the duration of the projects and give the estimators the time. Don't have them give you the time.
I like that. And then one for me, let's keep it to 4, actually. Let's increase the sense of urgency. And this is something that anyone listening to this podcast right now can do tomorrow. Increase your sense of urgency to get the schedule done. And keep in mind also that a good schedule can take about 12 weeks to develop. So you're not going to go say, hey, make me a schedule and have a full-blown project schedule that is ready to go for a $60 million project in a week. I mean, it's going to take 6 to 12 weeks. There are industry metrics that prove that, but move the beginning of that, move the start of that process, move the focus of that process early on, and increase your sense of urgency and get that schedule out to enable cost, quality, and safety. So in closing, Spencer, is there any advice that you'd like to give? Any closing comments for the audience today before we sign off?
Everyone knows schedule is super important, yet it's the one thing we don't understand. If you need help, there are so many resources out there. Please reach out. And whether it's through Elevate Construction, whether it's through any of the medians on YouTube or LinkedIn or anywhere, there's so much good content out there. Just make sure that we start to drive schedule, because that will decrease the number of safety incidences. That will help drive costs, and it'll provide such better quality to our customers.
I love that. So the vision for this would be that we use a schedule as a tool to drive cost, to drive safety, to drive quality, to protect, like Spencer said, the workers in the field, to give us environments with flow where people don't have to kill themselves literally on the projects and overwork themselves, where we don't have overburdened projects with unevenness, with waste, where we have a chance of winning from the beginning, where a project team doesn't feel automatically like they're already behind the 8 ball right out of the gate, where the project team honestly feels like they can win. And again, where we protect people's families by enabling the work-life balance of everyone on site. So if you have any questions, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. Please submit a question. We will continue to do scheduling podcasts every week to continue this subject. If you want an interview, if you want to provide feedback, please do that as well. And again, please also share this podcast with anybody who might benefit from it. We appreciate everything you do. Until we meet again, please move scheduling and the creation of a schedule up in your mind, in your sense of urgency. Until we meet again, on we go.
Please join us next time in elevating the entire construction experience for workers, leaders, and companies coast to coast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to share with your construction colleagues and help us spread the word by rating, subscribing, and leaving a review on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate it. We'll catch you next time on the Elevate Construction Podcast.